Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath, and I am joined by the director of Initiation, a new horror movie that I'm very excited about, John Berardo. Welcome to Serial at Midnight.
Thanks for having me.
How would you describe Initiation to someone who hasn't seen it?
I That's a really good question because I feel like the answer I would have had during press week is kind of different, now that the movie's out there and I'm hearing, what people say, but and not super different, but I'd pitch it differently, but it's still the same as it's a modern day slasher. It's a slasher for the newer millennials and the Gen Z generation, and essentially like I wanted to make a Scream for the modern day.
Scream had a huge impact on you, so we can talk a little bit about that. I mean, in the special features of the Blu-ray, you go very deep into it. Can you talk about, the impact of Scream on you as a young fan?
Yeah, Scream. So I grew up in Oklahoma, and I have great parents, and my parents didn't let me watch R-rated movies as a kid. And the very first like R-rated movie I saw, not for it wasn't the first R-rated movie, it was the first horror movie I'd say that I saw that really affected me was Scream. And it was because, when I was a kid and I'd watch scary movies, if something graphic or scary happened, I would, close my eyes or run away or not or leave the room. It was just too much for me. But Scream was a fun movie, and it had characters that were like that I identified with and wanted to see succeed. And, I feel like it was a combination of seeing that along with, just the brilliance of what Scream offered the 90s and how it just encompassed what it was like to be a youth in the 90s as well, mixed with the meta sort of uh, commentary on the horror slasher genre. I didn't watch horror movies, and so I didn't understand any of the references in Scream. So then Scream came out. I loved the movie so much. I then went and watched all the movies that Scream referenced, and I got them, and it made me like Scream more. And I also, I was so scared after I watched it. Like I loved it, but it terrified. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I was too scared when the sun would come down, and so I talked my grandma into buying the VHS behind my parents' back because they were like they knew that I saw it and they were pissed, and they're like, "You're never watching another scary movie again," And basically, I would go to my grandma's and secretly watch it and desensitize myself to it. And I would say after about 2 weeks of doing that, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I was just purely obsessed with it.
Did you ever get a chance to talk to Wes Craven or to meet Wes Craven?
No, I didn't. But actually, the guy that yeah, he died in 2015, I want to say. Yeah. I I wasn't a Wes Craven fanatic. I'm going to be brutally honest with people. What I loved about Wes Craven was like listening to the actors talk about working with him. He was so good at working with actors, and I think that's what made his horror fun. And he obviously had a ghoulish kind of style, and I think really the brilliance behind Scream was the page. It was Kevin Williamson, and obviously with Wes Craven, but I never got to meet him. I would have absolutely loved to because I feel like he's just a totally different horror director, than we are used to seeing. Like Jordan Peele reminds me a lot more of Wes Craven than any of the other types of directors, just with how he approaches the horror. And so, but the guy that did the commentary or the BTS featurette you're talking about, that producer told me he met Wes Craven, and Wes Craven probably would have loved my movie. So that made me happy to hear.
That's great. Yeah, and I think he would have because Scream was innovative in your movie, which you co-wrote. I should say you co-wrote this with the co-star of the movie and another person, but you have innovated as well, and you've brought something that I don't. I'm not really familiar with the social media aspect of our society in a horror movie where it is a character in the film. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and why you chose that?
Totally. That was like, I would say, one of the single things that helped keep this movie going for so long, because we haven't seen in horror yet a realistic portrayal of how not just kids, but especially kids, but everybody uses their phones and social media. And like, we're talking about Scream, and I think Scream encompassed the 90s so much that I wanted to do that with, today's generation. And I wanted to make sure that it was it had a sentimental throwback to the 90s purely from a genre standpoint, which I think kind of was an idea that we had that, since the movie's come out, I would, maybe think, maybe I should approach the very beginning of the movie slightly different, because some, especially slasher fans, like they want to see blood and guts right away, like Fear Street, that death happens right away. And I tried to write a script that did that. And I'm glad that I followed my gut and just didn't do that like I was told I should have for years. Social media, it was just so important, like to do it real and to do it the right way. And it started in the script. We didn't know how to write it in the script. Going to film school, they don't teach you how to write social media in a script. And I remember asking, and he's like, well, just make it up, do it your own way. And so, yeah, over the years, we just had draft after draft, and social media was always so important. And, I think I learned over time that there are things in the script that you don't need to write, that you just tell the actor to do on set, especially if you're writing something that you're going to direct. And so on set, the messages that you see on screen and all of that, that was all written into the script. I'd say about 70% of that changed in post, because we thought, this message that she was writing has nothing to do with the story, when we have an opportunity to make a character more suspicious or make us like a character more, or just say, hey, remember me, I'm in this, because we have a lot of suspects. So social media gave us that opportunity, but also on set, I just made sure that every single cast member had a real phone. So instead of actors acting, fake messaging and texting and posting, like every actor had a fake Instagram account, had, their own phone that was active, and we had a social media person on set screen recording everything and responding to, the scene for the actor. And then that way we could take, it was almost like a third camera. We could take those screen recordings and use them in post, and, be able to really help tell the story with social media in a different way.
Is reality important to a story? Does it have to reflect who we are, or can you just totally escape from that?
I think it can be both. I think you can totally escape from it, and I think it can. But when you go, one of the things they teach you is you have to establish the rules of your world when you write a script, direct a play, write a play, and you establish the rules of your world, right away. Is this real? It's like, a werewolf movie. Like we come to a werewolf or a vampire movie already sort of understanding the mythology of a vampire, which makes it, more realistic. But when the movie springs something on us that we haven't seen before, we're like, if we buy it or we don't buy it. So it's a risky sort of, game when it comes to, how the audience is going to perceive it. But if you're going to make a movie that has a social issue attached to the characters and the story arc, you do a disservice to people who've actually experienced that, that trauma in real life by steering away from reality and sort of giving the splatter fans and horror fans and slasher fans a little bit more of what I think they're expecting and how the movie was promoted. But there's just no way. I mean, we tried to write a script that way. And, we even went to nonprofits. I remember in one nonprofit, like More Than No, started by a girl named Madeline Harris I went to UCLA with for undergrad. And it's a really great nonprofit that is all about consent. And she read a draft of my script. This was in like 2015, 16. And she was like, I can't believe that you'd have a character. I mean, she just basically ripped my script apart when I was trying to keep slasher elements into sexual assault. So I think that it's a gamble, and you just got to kind of go with the dice.
What role did USC play? I mean, I know this script's been with you for a long time. You've been working on this movie for, I want to say, the better part of a decade, right? Like, how did USC play a part in bringing this to reality?
Well, USC itself didn't do a damn thing, but like if I didn't go to USC and meet the people and the network at USC, this movie would have never gotten made, like hands down. The only reason this movie ever got like investment was because of somebody I went to USC with. So the network is real. The other thing is, we made this movie for very cheap, very, very cheap. And we got a lot of favors from people at USC, people we went to USC with. Even, I think, the cinema school actually, that's not true. USC actually did give us a lot of favors and helped us in post, now that I think about it. We did a lot of ADR at USC because we had no money and we were like, we need to do some ADR. And USC was the post house at USC and the cinema school let us use their facilities. And, we gave one of their students a credit to do all of the engineering of the audio recording. So USC is definitely, the network is the whole reason the movie got made. But, like you said, it took 7 years. And I think that the reason it took so long was because the idea was different. It was a different slasher movie. It was risky. And, I also just think that your script has to be really, really good. And I'm a director, first and foremost, over a writer. I love working with writers. And that's why I think, it took so long, is because it went through so many phases of writing the script, somebody I went to USC with and somebody I went to UCLA with. So you got the best of both worlds.
There's so many cookie cutter horror movies that they feel fairly generic, and you just follow the beats, and yours does anything but that. So, job well done.
Lindsay said it. The actress and co-writer, she played Ellery. I just saw her last week and we were talking because, no one can prepare you for what it's like to release a movie, and especially in today's climate. And, we both were just like, look, we did something different. I don't think the movie has found its audience yet. That's one thing. Like, theatrical releases are nowadays purely for the Oscar nominees, the award nominees, and Marvel and Disney, for theatrical release. Kids that will understand this movie, like you're saying, I feel, are, not, most of them don't go out and seek this stuff and rent it or buy it. They wait for it to come out on streaming. And when you make something different, you start to see who your audience is as it comes out. It's almost like ink injecting into water. It's interesting.
I have a friend, a director friend, who recently said that things get lost in a sea of content. Do you find that with the modern, distribution landscape, with so many streaming services competing with each other and just so much, I mean, it's way more than the video stores ever had back in the day. Do you find are those services a benefit, or are they a challenge? Or maybe it's more complicated than that.
I think it's not black or white. I think it's just the change of the business, and you have to ride with the tide. And but you were right. There's so much content, and it's easy to get lost, especially in the horror genre. Like, my biggest fear is, the truth is, I got the movie fucking made. That's all that. Like, nothing can top that, or no, negative feedback or anything can push that. The movie got made. Somebody's gonna always be negative about it, especially if they're paid, to write something about it. So that's not the case. It's more so just the fact that I didn't want it to be one of those Netflix horror movies, that people like. But if it does become that, I do believe, because of what you're saying, that it doesn't follow those beats, that it's almost like having a kid. You can't steer the kid forever. It's going to come to an age and a level to where you just got to let it do its thing. And over time, the kid will find its way. The movie's the exact same way, whether it was 10 years ago or nowadays. But one thing that we didn't have, that I think is gonna, hopefully go back, was the festival release. When your movie is a South by Southwest Midnighter, that is used to sell the movie, obviously, to distributors, but then distributors use that to sell the movie to the audience. Because South by got canceled, we didn't have the buzz. Like, movie release is all about PR. All about PR. I don't care what anybody else says. And a distributor has their PR people who know who to get their movie to, so that they can say the things that they need about it to get the money they need. Saban is more of like an aggregator. They're like, we know how to make the right art to get people to click on it, to get the hits that we need to make our money back. And, without that festival PR, it kind of does leave the filmmaker in a really precarious position. It's like, where do I go? What do I do? So I feel like it's all going to be trying to be word of mouth and letting people know, hey, there's a totally different horror film. And if we did our job right, over time, it'll, you know, speak to people.
So the movie is made. It's getting out there. We're waiting on that streaming thing. But here's what I want to know. So at some point there will be many children who see this, just like you saw Scream, and who will be inspired by this. And what would you say to those kids who might be inspired by this movie and then want to go do something themselves?
Keep going. Don't give up. When I graduated USC, you know, they have this thing called like the black hole that you go into because you're at USC. You're like USC is like actually working for a studio when you go to USC. It's literally like working for a studio. And when you graduate, all that's, you know, it's gone. In your face, it's the concrete, you know, much like actors who go to theater school. And it's a struggle. And it's a hustle to, especially if you're trying to get your movie independently financed, so you don't want to get a job. I'm all about money is one thing, time's another. And I look back at the last decade and I do not regret a damn thing because, you know, every single step I made got me to what, you know, my dream was. And when I graduated, I had no job. I had a couple of like freelance gigs, but not enough to like, you know, live. And yeah, this is coming up on 10 years ago. And I had a Prius, and so I would drive Uber. And I remember one passenger in Uber said to me like, well, you know, there's no people that don't make it. There's just people that give up. And so that always, like, I don't remember this person's name. I remember who they are, but that stuck with me. And this is like 2014, you know, and I kept that in the back of my mind. And so I'd say that to people, like, there's no such thing as people who don't make it. There's just people who give up. And you also, you know, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it, or don't let, you know, people's reactions to your dreams or you saying that you want to do something deter you from that, because the number of eye rolls I got, you know, telling people what I wanted to be when I grew up, you know, was far more than the number of people that said, you go, you do it. And you know, I think that times are different now too than they were when I was a kid. And, you know, I don't know how old you are, but we grew up in a different time. And I think, especially being from Alabama, you know, kid who wants to go make movies in Hollywood, like, good luck. So that, you know, that's what I'd say is like, just don't stop. Just don't let anybody make you feel like you aren't who you want to be.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful advice. Where can we tell us where we can see this movie? How do you want us to find this thing?
Well, I mean, if you like DVDs, you can get it at Best Buy. You can get it on Amazon. If you like digital copies, you can get the DVD and get a digital copy, or you can get it on Amazon Prime. It's still you still have to purchase or rent it. iTunes, Apple TV, Redbox, anywhere with a digital, you know, watching movies in theaters option. And then I don't know when it's going to be streaming. We were told the fall, and I don't know where or what platform yet, but I think that in the meantime, just get the word out like you're doing. Give us a good score on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, because really, like, when this movie is put out in front of the world, it's, you know, it's the words of what have been said about the movie thus far that are going to get people interested in it. And so we just got to keep pushing that.
Where can we keep any announcements? Anywhere you want us to follow you? A website, or, you know, follow your Twitter?
My name at John Berardo, or the movie at Initiation Film. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I don't have a Twitter. You know, it's like, you know, nowadays a website is kind of like, you know, super like 2000. So, but I have a website. But really, Instagram's where I'm most active and where I feel like I can engage with people.
All right. Well, I'm going to put links to those places in the description of this video. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Well, thank you for having me and, you know, chatting about the movie. And I'm so glad that it spoke to you, and I'm glad that you liked it.
Thank you. And guys, you check out the movie. Let me know what you think about it. We'll continue that conversation. We'll help to get the word out about this. So for this interview, thank you, John. And for you guys at home, thanks for watching, and take care. Until next time, we will catch you later.